Hi there, Titan DIY here, and I'm back with a completed NR200P build. So as you can see, I've got everything wired up, tested, assembled, and I'm super happy with how it's turned out here. But before I got the last screws on, I did want to throw some of my own thoughts, design considerations out as far as building up this case, tips and tricks, just some stuff that might help people in their NR200 build path. So let's take a quick look. Thought a good place to start here might be the PSU power and wiring. Obviously the focal point of this build was to keep all the wires as hidden as possible while showing off sort of the hardware itself. So that was obviously one of the trickier parts. I did start everything out in Draw.io, just sort of building up like a Visio diagram of the wiring itself before I even picked up a screwdriver on this build. So that was a big part of it, was just planning out how much wiring I needed and where I could hide it. So PSU itself is SFX-L, mounted to the front panel. I think typically you see people mount full-size ATX PSU here. Certainly can. SFX-L does fit, so I had no problem with that. It was the color I wanted, and allowed for a little extra room just in this area. So I have the ATX power cable coming up from the back of the motherboard. I'll show you that backside here in a minute. I didn't have room for a 90-degree adapter, so what I had to use was just this ATX extension with some wire combs on there. So worked out pretty good. Pretty happy with that. On the top panel, we have our fan headers, pretty close to the radiator. GPU power, we have standard 8-pin going up to a U-turn adapter, so this keeps sort of the front, the head of the cable out of the way, as well as allows for a nice clean look down the back. Most of the wiring itself, like the ATX power as well as GPU power, a few of the bottom corner header pins, these are on these large looms that are just snaking down that I wrapped together. So let's take a quick look at the back panel. This side's covered by the opaque mesh, so you don't really ever see anything that happens back here. It's all covered by the motherboard, the GPU, the front of the case for the most part. So again, while this is all hidden, it's nice to keep some stuff out of the way if you can. So we have the ATX extension cable. Again, guys, most of my cables in this case are using extension cables. Just helped with routing and snaking everything where I needed it to go. So ATX cable itself coming off the PSU, down along the bottom, making a little U-turn here and connecting to the extension cable, which snakes out through the back of the motherboard. So you do have a few millimeters to play with behind your motherboard. It's not a lot. So you really have to be conscious about not squeezing anything together here, as well as making sure everything actually fits with the back panel on. This build, this case, it really helps having a pair of calipers, simply because you can use those to see how much room you have to play with when you're building it out. So the back panel itself only has a few millimeters of play. So that's important when you're kind of tucking everything together here. It might bulge out, so you just want to, be conscientious about how much space you have here. It's not a lot when you're building. So that's sort of the back panel. The front, we don't really talk about the front panel too much, but it's there. It's together and does what it needs to do. Again, not a lot of space here in the front panel. Use your calipers to see what you're looking at. I think it's, want to say, maybe roughly 23 millimeters of width to work with. So I was able to hide a lot of my wiring here, as well as fan hub. This is using the sys fans, powering the sys fans, because the header itself is a 1 amp header. So 3 fans, 0.55 amps would potentially overload that. So a lot of people, you do see a lot of people overloading their sys fan header. Powered fan hub helps with that. So we have 3 sys fans on there, 2 on the bottom and 1 on the side. And RGB hub for the Corsair Slim RGBs. So these both fit in here pretty fine. I did have to have an extra screw keeping the front panel on just in case it flew off. It is pretty squished. So yeah, again, we don't talk about the front panel. So that's really the power of the wiring in a nutshell. Any questions, comments, just feel free to post and I'll try and get to those as quick as I can. And next video we'll do cooling. Thanks, guys.